Hey my dear friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we're looking at the 2020 Mazda 3 Hatch, fully loaded with a premium package, and it also has all-wheel drive. So I'm going to show it to you inside and out. We're going to take it for a little test drive, and I'm going to tell you what I really think. All right, let's talk about styling just a little bit. This has been completely redesigned starting with the 2019 model year, now 2020. This is a very nice color. I like it. Polymetal gray metallic. Pretty nice, huh? I like it. It's very similar to the machine gray in some of its attributes, but it's different. Because of the trim grade we have here, this has a gloss black grille, gloss black 18-inch wheels, and gloss black trim sort of follows throughout here. I like the way it looks, especially with this color. LED headlights are standard on this. One of the things I like to point out is the fact that we have the latest variation of what Mazda calls their Kodo design language, a very Japanese emotional styling language as their marketing materials describe. What I see here, very trademark of it, are a lot of deep recesses here in the grille, the headlights. Not something you see in a lot of new cars right now because everyone's gone with the super aerodynamic, flush everything, wallpapered on sort of detail look. Here Mazda has managed to get away with it somehow in the aerodynamic sculpturing to have some deep recesses that give it some character. The silhouette of the front, sort of a forward-leaning nose. I like that. As we go down the side, another thing I'd like to point out is notice how that window line kicks up as it goes into the C-pillar. Sort of a retro touch, almost reminiscent to some of the 70s Japanese cars there I'm seeing. As we get around to the rear three-quarter view, this has a nice planted look. It's got wide hips, and some people might not even like that because of the way this is designed. It lost some of the sharp creases and lines that a lot of car makers would use to define the shape here. It's just a shape that you sort of have to walk around in 3D to see exactly how that form operates. At least there is some detail up in the roof. You can see some nice lines up there. That actually gives the body structure strength, but it also gives it some detail where it might be lacking elsewhere. LED taillights, a little bit of detail there as well. And the best part, of course, I always notice things like the genuine exhaust tips, not fakes like you see on the Toyota Corolla Hatch as well as the Volkswagen Golf. Inside, this is a pretty nice interior. When you step up into the premium trim grade, you get this choice of this nice dark red leather, or you can get black leather. It's just a very nicely done cabin, and that's the first thing that struck me when I sat in this car. And as I've lived in it this week, nothing in this interior, except for one thing, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, has disappointed me. The materials, I mean, look at this. I've got nice stitched soft trim on the dash that flows beautifully into the door panels. I've got chrome trims that look very expensive, and that goes into even the aluminum speaker grills that you see for the Bose stereo system. The switchgear, very well laid out, high quality, and that goes to the simplicity and just the overall execution as well. It's well designed, it's well put together, and the fit and finish in here is just absolutely a price grade or two up in my opinion. As I sit here, I've got very comfortable seats. These are heated seats on this trim grade. They're power adjustable, manual over here on this one. The seating position feels very cocoon-like in here, not necessarily like a crossover or SUV. You're sitting down in this car. Visibility, however, is very good, except for perhaps that big C-pillar back there. But hanging your hands on the steering wheel, it's a nice comfortable steering wheel. I've got paddle shifters here. Looking ahead to the instrument cluster, a very interesting instrument cluster design, I think. You've got a 7-inch center screen, which is a fully digital screen, but they've laid a chrome dial over the center. So you have a theme of a dial, but it's actually an electronic screen all the way across, and even the small side gauges on the outboard parts of that ring are part of that screen. It's a nice layout, and you can completely customize it any way you want with the information that you want in the center using the various controls here. The one thing that I did find a little bit of disappointment with is when we look down here to the console, the cup holders are placed in a way that you have to reach around the shifter to get to them, and if you have anything very large, they're not going to fit there because it's right up here under the dash. There is a nice cubby up in front of them for your phone and a few other things, a USB port there. In the center console storage area, there's also a wireless charger that's optional on this, as well as other ports and plugs down there for your accessories. Not a very big storage area on this car, however. The one area that really disappoints me about this car is this infotainment system and the user interface. Now, if you watched any of my reviews in the past, I've gone nuts about this with Mazda. It is literally the absolute worst interface, I think, my opinion, in any car out there, any brand out there. Mazda puts this in everything. It's one knob, one dial, and a few buttons, and you're controlling everything that you have to control with this screen. Now, further away and no longer a touch screen because you just can't reach it. It is a larger screen, it's wider, it's a wide format. The graphics are good, it's easy to see, I'll hand it that. But trying to do anything like just tune a station, change the source for your audio, page through the menus to try to change your settings, you shouldn't be doing that while driving, especially given the fact that you've got to do everything through one puck and one knob. It's very difficult to use, and yes, I understand all you Mazda owners out there, you think I'm full of crap. You tell me this every time down in the comments, I get it. I just disagree. I get in these cars, I test them. There are so many other cars out there that are easier to use, easier to live with. This is just absolutely the worst garbage in the business, in my opinion. I'm sorry, Mazda, you need to fix this. You need to stop putting this in every single one of your cars. It's maddening. Outside of that, it's a good system. The audio from the Bose is awesome. It's awesome. It's just using it sucks. So there's that. Your rear seat passengers are going to have plenty of room, as you can see. These seats are set for my height, about 5'8", 5'9", depending on the shoes I'm wearing. And you can see that I've got some pretty good leg room back here. If you had a 6-foot driver in front of you, you might have a little bit less. There's an indentation on these seats, so your knees aren't going to be right up against it, even if it's a little bit further back. Now, because this is a car, not a crossover, I do have a lower seating position, so my knees are perched up a little bit. But the good thing is these seats have a lot of contouring that give you support, and they're actually quite comfortable. The headroom here is actually not bad. I've got about 2 inches above my head. There's an indentation in this roof that allows for that. Here I've got a fold down armrest, cup holders. These seats of course do fold down in a 60-40 split, an almost flat load floor. As you can see in the trunk, it's a pretty good sized trunk for a hatch like this. This larger rear flank that we saw on the outside transmits to a little bit more luggage space back there, and underneath that floor, as I always love to see, especially on a car with driving intentions, is a spare tire, a mini spare at that. In the center of that is the subwoofer for the audio system. That's what that is. The only thing I'd have to complain about back here is the lack of vents, given the fact that we are in a little bit more of a premium product here. I would almost expect to see that. That is missing, but overall, this interior is, I think, one of the best in the business. The quality, the materials, the design, very appealing to look at, and best of all, it's comfortable to live in every day. The only thing I really have to bitch about is that human interface, but once we get away from that, we're in pretty good shape here. So the first question I always like to ask is, how does it go? Well, it's got zoom zoom. Oh, that's awful, huh? Bringing up an old marketing number. Well, here's the deal. We've got a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine, naturally aspirated, no turbocharger. It's made it to a 6-speed automatic here. You can get a manual. And I've also got all-wheel drive as an option. So going back to the engine, 186 horsepower, 186 pound-feet of torque. Not necessarily what fast cars are made of. So this is not the fastest car in its class, but it's got a very refined engine, and an engine that is more than willing to do what you ask. You can use the paddle shifters. They respond pretty well, I think. It's just got a nice spirit. It's always willing to have a little bit of fun. It's just not the fastest thing out there. Very much like the Mazda Miata. So I like the transmission, I like the engine. Now, the one thing with this engine that's interesting is it has cylinder deactivation, something that we don't see a lot of cars out there offering in a 4-cylinder engine. That means that it actually shut down cylinders to save fuel when you don't need the power. And This has been going on since I've had the car all week, and it's very, very much not even noticeable. So I'm pretty impressed with that. One of the poison pills with all-wheel drive is it tends to be a little bit slower than if I just had front-wheel drive, because this all-wheel drive system really isn't about handling and performance like, say, in a Subaru WRX. Here, it's about all-weather traction. And so as a consequence, I get maybe a little bit less performance, but definitely less MPG. This is rated at 24 city, 32 highway, and 27 MPG combined, about 2 to 3 MPG less than the front-wheel drive counterpart. I will say though, in my week with this, I've actually achieved about 28 MPG combined, and that's with a lot of city driving, so it does meet or exceed what the window sticker is going to promise you when it comes to the MPG. So powertrain, I'm pretty happy with here. I'm happy with the fact that it does not have auto start-stop. Mazda hasn't yet jacked us with that like Volkswagen has and a lot of other manufacturers. That's one of my problems with Volkswagen Golf and the GTI is they sort of tarnished the driver's character of those cars by adding that feature, in my opinion. Here, Mazda still doesn't do it. Kudos to Mazda. When it comes to handling, ride, and drive, I find that the suspension here is very much in the Mazda vein. It's a firm suspension. It's got nice reflexes when you turn. Now, I haven't had a chance to take this up on a mountain road, but I've done quite a bit of driving around town and taking turns quick. It's just got a nice, springy, willing character that you'd expect from a car that's tuned for an enthusiast driver. It's got a quiet ride, even on the freeway, even with a sunroof, and it doesn't seem to react harshly over a lot of the bumps and things like that that you get to have in everyday city driving. The speed humps, those little undulations that you have to slow you down on neighborhood streets, doesn't do so good on those, but it's never harsh. All right, my friends, there you have it for my test drive and review of the 2020 Mazda 3 Hatch. I gotta tell you, I really do like this car. I have a long history with Mazdas. I've owned several of them, 2 Miatas, an MPV minivan, and there's been quite a few other experiences in my life. I sold Mazdas for some time, so I'm very familiar with the brand and what it's about. And I have to say that Mazda's done a really good job over the decades of really staying true to what they're about and not losing it, right? They've always been sort of a driver's car. They've always had the detail and the performance feel and sort of this little bit different kind of thing going on. Almost, dare I say it, the Saab of Japanese brands. There's just been something slightly different and unique about them that always set them apart from the Toyotas and the Hondas of the world. So let's get to my 3 key takeaways. The very first thing is this is a driver's car. Not a big surprise. We've talked about that. I just went through a little spiel about it. Mazda has always sort of appealed to the driving enthusiast, not only in form but function. This car definitely does that. Of all the cars that are in this class right now, I think this is the best driver's car, and that's even including the GTI, I have to say. A very good car, always been the benchmark in my opinion, but Volkswagen's really kind of lost their way recently, and while the GTI is still faster than this probably, and maybe a little bit sharper on the handling, this has just got a great feel and an all-around daily vibe to it that I like. So, driver's car. Interior is my second key takeaway. This has a dynamic, beautiful, wonderful to look at, comfortable interior. The only thing obviously I didn't like about it was that user interface, but you get away from that. Everything about this interior is best in class. In fact, I would almost say you would have a hard time finding a better interior if you went up to Audi, Acura, and some of those. It's really good, and we talked about that. The third thing is, and this gets to those things, this is a premium choice in the class. If you look at Toyota Corolla Hatch, Hyundai Elantra GT, some of the other cars you can compare this directly against that are in the 5-door hatch segment in this size class, this is the most expensive premium choice. This is the premium choice. In fact, I mentioned some of the luxury brands there. Not quite up to that place, but this is somewhere in between. This is more expensive than you're going to get in any Toyota, Honda, or Nissan that you could possibly get this up against. The Subaru Impreza is another choice, especially when we're talking about all-wheel drive options. This is a lot more car than that, in my opinion. It just is. So those are the 3 key takeaways, and at $32,000, it is a premium car. What can you say? So there you go. If you like the review you just saw, I recommend that you click right there, see my latest one, or better yet, click down there, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can see everything I do.